Think about someone who could effortlessly connect ancient wisdom, like from the Bhagavad Gita to the really pressing issues we face today.
Yeah, imagine a voice that could champion deeply held beliefs with, well, both intellectual rigor and real passion.
Exactly. Expressed through these captivating speeches that, really resonated with people.
Mm.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into understanding just such a figure, Chithraambalaalar.
And what makes this deep dive unique is our focus. We aren't just looking at the topics Chithraambalaalar discussed.
Right.
Our mission is really to understand the man himself, his values, the core of his thinking, and the very specific way he saw the world around him.
Exactly. And our main sources for this exploration are the transcribed speeches he delivered on Canada's Geethavani Radio.
This collection, the Gita in today's events.
Yeah, it offers us this invaluable direct connection to his thoughts and, importantly, how he chose to phrase them.
By really digging into the themes he kept coming back to, the particular details he focused on in his arguments, the stories he picked, and even, like, the structure of his reasoning, we can build a much more nuanced picture of this significant Tamil figure.
So for you, the listener, this is a real opportunity to move beyond just, simple biographical facts.
Right, to truly grasp the essence of his perspective and, well, what really drove him.
Chithraambalaalar's voice, sadly, is no longer with us. He has passed away. And this collection of his speeches serves as this powerful, enduring tribute to his life and work.
And a central thread, you really see it running through, was the relevance of the Gita today. Especially, when so much emphasis is on material success.
Right.
So our mission today is clear. We want to explore Chithraambalaalar's inner world, his core beliefs, and the passions that fueled his advocacy.
And we'll do this by closely examining the themes, the specific examples he brought to life in these speeches, paying close attention not just to what he said,
but how he chose to say it.
Exactly. Okay, let's start right at the beginning then, with the eulogy and dedication included in this collection.
Good place to start.
Yeah, because right from these initial words, you start to see the profound impact he had, and maybe the essence of his character as perceived by those who knew him.
Absolutely. The depth of respect, the genuine sorrow expressed in that tribute, it's immediately obvious. Calling him the sculptor of thoughts, that's powerful. And the great tree metaphor.
Yeah, that really conveys his influence, doesn't it? And the legacy he created in people's minds.
It does. And the fact that the Siriskantharajah publication felt it was so vital to gather and preserve these Geethavani Radio speeches.
Under that title, The Gita and Today's Events.
Right. It speaks volumes about the value people placed on his spoken words. That his way of articulating his understanding was something special, something to be treasured.
The eulogy also gives a pretty concise summary of what his followers saw as the core of his teaching.
His ability to bridge the Gita's wisdom with, well, everyday life, national customs, the real challenges people faced.
And often contrasting that with what they called the computer world, right? This materialistic focus.
Exactly. A world maybe driven more by tech and less by spiritual values in their view.
It's interesting. They specifically mention his belief that life needed purpose beyond just existing.
Yeah, and his literary work, Tamilar Kuruchchethra Geethai, the Tamil's Kuruchchethra Gita, that's highlighted.
Which really underscores his connection to the Tamil Elam cause, Kurukshetra being the Gita's battlefield setting. The title itself says a lot.
It really does. And what's particularly revealing here is that clear link between his spiritual and political beliefs.
How so?
Well, the eulogy explicitly states he openly explained there was nothing wrong in revering the Black Tigers.
Kurumpulugal.
Okay, and for listeners who might not know, the Black Tigers were a controversial group within the Tamil Elam movement, known for suicide missions.
Right, so his open reverence for them on public platforms, it reveals a perspective where his spiritual understanding and his political beliefs weren't separate.
They were deeply intertwined, finding meaning in each other.
Exactly, finding justification, meaning, connection. The tribute also paints this picture of an incredibly multifaceted person. All those pseudonyms, Chithraambalaalar, Sithamagamon.
Yeah, Prathapan, yeah. And the sheer range of talents. Orator, debater, publisher, essayist, critic.
Folk artist, actor, director,
Yeah.
and also, importantly, known for kindness.
A cultured person, pleasant demeanor. It suggests a really rich inner life, a desire to connect on many levels.
And those biographical details in the eulogy, they give crucial context, don't they?
Absolutely. Born in 1953, S.K. Siriskantharajah, his education.
Mm.
These early experiences shaped him.
Being displaced as a refugee, his time in Europe, That must have broadened his perspective.
Likely, yes. And founding that religious journal, Jnana Kural, the voice of true wisdom, to address concerns about religious conversions.
Shows his early engagement with identity, faith, the challenges his community faced globally.
And finally, the eulogy remembers his later years in Canada, a beacon of light for the community there.
And mentions the family he left behind, that personal touch. It underlines the human impact.
Right. It suggests his speeches weren't just abstract ideas, but deeply felt expressions that resonated.
So this initial glimpse really sets the stage. Now we can dive into the actual speeches and explore the nuances.
Okay, let's start with his speech, The Mind, from October 14th, 1996.
Right.
One of the first things he does is frame the current era as Kali Yuga.
The final, most degenerate age in Hindu cosmology.
Exactly. Characterized by moral decline, spiritual darkness. He uses this framework right away to suggest that, distinguishing good and evil is incredibly difficult now.
Because evil often disguises itself.
Precisely. It sets a tone of caution, the need for careful discernment.
Then he uses that classic allegory, the devas and asuras, good versus evil.
But he doesn't just retell the myth. He makes a very direct contemporary connection.
How so?
He identifies the Sinhalese, whom he sees as perpetrating injustices against Tamils, as the Asuras in this modern context.
Implying the Tamils are the devas struggling for righteousness.
This use of religious allegory to interpret a political conflict is, well, it's a powerful and recurring feature you see in his speeches.
And he uses this framework to discuss different approaches to conflict.
Yes, quite insightfully. He references Lord Shiva consuming poison in Junakantan to save the devas.
Okay.
Drawing a parallel, perhaps, to how diplomatic methods might be seen as a necessary but difficult offering, like divine intervention.
But he contrasts that.
He does. He contrasts it with the sacrifices being made by the Tamil people, who he says have poison around their necks and courage in the battlefield.
Oh.
He elevates their struggle, calls it a new Purana, a contemporary epic within that same tradition of self-sacrifice for a greater good.
That framing really imbues their struggle with profound moral significance, justifying it within a religious narrative.
It absolutely does. It links a specific political struggle to this grand, timeless Hindu narrative, giving it deeper spiritual resonance for his listeners.
Following this, he gets into Dharma and Adharma, righteousness and unrighteousness.
And he's quite pointed in his criticism of the Sri Lankan government.
Arguing their actions contradict Buddhist teachings, even though they claim to govern by them.
Exactly. Highlighting what he sees as hypocrisy, the misuse of religious ideology for a political ends.
He says Dharma has committed suicide.
Yes, a very stark, dramatic statement, underscoring his conviction that fundamental principles of justice were being violated.
Which sets the stage for that poignant anecdote he shares.
Right, the story of the Tamil man in the Colombo mental hospital. He uses it to illustrate the devastating human cost, the underlying cruelty, as he saw it.
Yeah, that was a really striking, disturbing story. The man drinking sewage water out of desperation.
Due to alcoholism and fear, and then finding his blood had been forcibly taken for the Sri Lankan army.
Chithraambalaalar interprets this as revealing the mindset of those cruel people.
Yes, but also in a complex way. He suggests that even in this tragedy, there's a twisted recognition that the perpetrators implicitly acknowledge a kind of unique heroism in this Tamil individual.
It's deeply unsettling, finding layers of meaning even in horrific circumstances.
It's an anecdote that really stays with you, weaving together the personal, the political, the tragic, the symbolic.
And from that story, he moves to a very direct assertion.
A very powerful one. The foundation of Dharma is Elam, Tamil Elam.
A central tenet for him, the establishment of an independent Tamil state as fundamental for righteousness.
Exactly. It encapsulates the centrality of this cause to his entire worldview.
And he concludes that speech emphasizing mind control.
Yes, contrasting physical ailments, often treatable with medicine, with the much harder challenge of mastering one's own mind.
Saying the only true refuge is devotion to Paramasavan, the supreme being.
Right. Highlighting his belief in spiritual discipline as essential, both individually and for navigating the Kali Yuga he described.
Okay, let's turn to his speech specifically on mind control then, from April 21st, 1996. He must delve deeper there.
He certainly does. He starts by directly referencing Krishna's guidance to Arjuna in the Gita.
Focusing on fixing the mind on the divine, detachment from the material world.
Right. And dedicating yourself to duty without expecting personal reward. He connects this ancient wisdom to the everyday internal conflicts we all face.
Showing the practical relevance of these principles.
Exactly. To overcome personal challenges, find inner peace amidst the turmoil.
He emphasizes loving God above desires.
Strongly, using that analogy, just as you nourish a plant by watering its roots or sustain the body by feeding the stomach.
True mastery comes from devotion to the Almighty.
And it's significant when he suggests praying for a good mind, clear, compassionate, focused, rather than just material things.
Reflecting that value system where inner spiritual wealth trumps external riches.
That prioritization of inner well-being is definitely a central theme for him.
And he illustrates the danger of an uncontrolled mind with that tragic story from France.
Yes, the mother who killed her mentally ill daughter, a disturbing example. He interprets it as the mind overpowering even maternal love.
Arguing it showed her failure to seek and cultivate a good mind filled with compassion.
It's an extreme example, yes, but it underscores the urgency he places on the need for mind control.
A very stark illustration of the potential consequences. Then he makes a bold claim about different kinds of knowledge.
He does. He argues for the superiority of spiritual wisdom, vimanam, over purely scientific knowledge, vijnanam.
Specifically for controlling the mind.
Right. His reasoning is that while we use science, our primary instruments for navigating life are the mind and intellect.
So engaging them with the Supreme Being naturally leads the senses towards his service.
That's his point. He stresses having complete faith that connecting with the divine is the most effective path to inner mastery.
Does he offer specific methods?
He does. He emphasizes it's a gradual, persistent effort, using that striking metaphor, the whip called devotion, bhakti, to gently guide the mind.
Referencing the Gita directly.
Yes. Chapter 6, verses 35 and 6, supporting the idea of gradual subdual through practice and devotion, shows his deep grounding in the text.
And he contrasts the outcomes. Mastering the mind versus failing to.
Starkly, a controlled mind is your best friend, clarity, peace. An uncontrolled one, your greatest enemy, negativity, suffering.
And he connects this personal work to a larger societal vision.
He does, suggesting these Hindu principles of mind control and devotion can pave the way for greater equality, world prosperity, individual discipline having ripple effects.
Okay, let's shift to his speech on guna, or qualities character, from May 5th, 1996, Exploring Human Nature.
Right. He starts with a broad observation about, well, ordinary human fallibility.
Making mistakes, delusion, being controlled by immature senses.
And contrast this with the historical role of religious leaders, rulers, sages, guides who had sort of transcended these common limits through wisdom.
Setting up a framework for understanding different qualities shaping behavior.
Exactly. Then he pivots sharply to critique Sri Lanka's then president, Chandrika Kumaratunga.
Focusing on an interview about the war against the LTTE.
Yes, quoting her statements about potential repercussions, Sinhalese weariness, influence of Buddhist prelates pushing for war.
And the LTTE, for context, was the Tamil militant group seeking an independent state. A deeply divisive conflict.
Very much so. And his condemnation of her statements is quite strong.
He calls her a thinker far more base than the ordinary person described by Hinduism.
Yes, a powerful judgment. He criticizes her for making decisions based on one religious group's influence, potentially inciting racism, seeing it as a betrayal of ethical leadership.
A clear example of him applying his Hindu ethical principles to contemporary politics, holding leaders accountable.
Definitely. Then, after that sharp commentary, he explains the three gunas, sattva, goodness, rajo, passion, and tamas, ignorance.
Fundamental concepts in Hindu philosophy.
Exactly. Representing the modes of nature influencing thought and action.
And he identifies the Mavarar, the heroes sacrificing for Tamil Elam, as exemplars of sattva guna. Goodness.
Yes. Drawing a parallel between their selflessness and spiritual seekers detaching from worldly attachments, referencing Gita 14.6.
Elevating their actions to a spiritual level, framing their sacrifice as driven by purity, freedom from selfish desires.
Precisely. But then, in contrast, he characterizes the Tamil diaspora refugees living abroad as possessing rajo guna, passion, activity.
Citing their perceived loss of religion, language, culture, and the relentless pursuit of wealth.
Even quoting Gita 14.1, describing increased passion, attachment, uncontrollable desire, intense endeavor. It's a more critical, maybe cautionary perspective on the diaspora experience.
Suggesting their focus on worldly activity might overshadow spiritual roots, Okay, let's look at his speech on anger from May 19th, 1996.
He kicks this one off quoting Gita 5.23, tolerating urges, checking desire and anger.
And grounds it in history again.
Yes, the story of Panduravanyan, the last Tamil king in Vanya, and his betrayal by Kakai Vanyan, a characteristic approach for him.
Using historical narrative to illustrate a philosophical point.
Exactly. He recounts the events meticulously, emphasizing that Kakai Vanyan's treachery was fueled by intense anger and jealousy over Kuruvechi Nachiyar.
A personal conflict with major political consequences.
He details Panduravanyan's effective rule, his sister's responsibilities, the order disrupted by this internal fight.
And the betrayal itself, Kakai Vanyan's deception.
Yes, assuming the false identity, Brahmanantan, the manipulative Gandharva marriage with Panduravanyan's sister, Nilanachi.
A marriage based on mutual consent, but here based on deception.
Right, adding to the tragedy. And the climax is Nilanachi's suicide upon discovering the truth.
Presented as an act of self-respect, embodying the principle that the Tamil Elam land is the foundation of self-respect.
A very poignant moment, symbolizing the connection between personal honor and the homeland's integrity.
Then he analyzes Panduravanyan's reaction to all this and the British advances.
Initially, he sought diplomacy in Kandy, but learning of British incursions fueled by anger over the betrayal and his sister's honor.
He abandoned diplomacy and fought based on valor alone.
Driven by anger, which ultimately led to the loss of the last Tamil kingdom there, a powerful cautionary tale about unchecked anger.
And after that story, he shifts to philosophy, the origin of anger.
Yes. Referencing the creation myth, Brahma's anger manifesting as Nila Lohithan, later Rudra Shiva, connecting it to foundational myths, Gita 10.23.
Giving anger a significant place in the cosmic order.
He even mentions the initial creation of destructive Rakshasas from Shiva's anger, and Brahma then instructing him to create good beings.
Highlighting the dual potential destruction, but maybe also righteous action if channeled.
Perhaps, but the main message is caution about uncontrolled expression.
And he concludes by returning to the Gita's warning.
The three gates to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Gita 16.21, reiterating the need to renounce anger to avoid destruction, personally and collectively.
Blending history, philosophy, scripture effectively. Okay, now his speech on Arignar Anna, December 14th, 1996, a unique take on a major Tamil political figure.
Yes, C.N. Annadurai, founder of the DMK party. Chithraambalaalar immediately challenges the common view of Anna as an atheist.
Arguing he was actually a rational theist, a true Esakavadi, a believer in God. Quite a reinterpretation.
It is. He supports it by analyzing Anna's statements, like Anna's observation about the contradiction of worshipping Shiva in a liquor shop or offering liquor in a temple.
Chithraambalaalar sees that not as rejecting God, but insisting on the purity of God's abode.
Exactly. Aimed at hypocrisy, misrepresentation of religion, not God's existence itself. A nuanced reading.
Then he discusses Anna's critique of Kambar's Ramayana, mixing erotic sentiment, kamarasa, with devotional essence, kambarasa.
Right. Chithraambalaalar connects this to the Gita's teaching on lust leading to anger, suggesting an ethical concern in Kambar's portrayal.
Elaborating on Anna's view that a story about belief in God should prioritize devotion over eroticism.
Aligning it with Gita 3.26, not unsettling the minds of the ignorant engaged in devotion, leading by example, a shared concern for the narrative's impact.
Emphasizing Anna's aversion to excessive lust in Kambar's Ramayana, feeling it overshadowed God rasa, Rama, merit, liberation.
Yes, Anna seemingly sought depicting a land of pleasure rather than a sacred instructive story.
And Anna felt occasional devotional bits didn't redeem the overall work.
That's the interpretation. The dominant sentiment should have been devotion, and too much eroticism detracted from that.
So Chithraambalaalar links Anna's condemnation of lust back to the Gita again. Chapter 3, verse 41 on curbing lust.
Yes. Arguing this critique demonstrates Anna's underlying spirituality, his belief in one community, one God.
Even explaining Anna's definition of Kadaval, God, as the Jivan life force within the body, connecting it to Anna's statement, God exists.
And finally, mentioning MGR's statement, Anna is my God, as further evidence of Anna's perceived spiritual significance, despite his rationalism. A fascinating alternative view.
It really is. Let's move to his speech on birth from December 22nd, 1996, exploring the Hindu understanding of life cycles.
Okay, he starts by establishing the Hindu view of birth and rebirth as, well, scientifically sound.
Referencing the Sivapuranam in Gita 4.5, where Krishna remembers past births, setting the stage for harmony between tradition and science.
Right. Then he contrasts this directly with Darwin's theory of evolution, from The Origin of Species, published 1859.
Summarizing Darwin's idea of sequential progression insect to ape to man, acknowledging it as the widely accepted scientific explanation today.
But, fascinatingly, he doesn't see it as contradicting the Hindu view. He asserts Darwin's theory actually validates the scientific principle told by Hinduism about life's cyclical transformation over time.
Bridging what are often seen as separate worldviews, finding convergence.
It's a remarkable attempt. He elaborates by discussing Gita 4.34, encouraging approaching a spiritual master, learning through service, inquiry, research.
Interpreting this as fostering a spirit of scientific inquiry within Hinduism itself.
Exactly. Aligning the quest for knowledge with scientific exploration, then he addresses the seemingly foolish tales in Hinduism.
Like Karthikeyan, born in the Ganges, or a maiden from a deer's womb, acknowledging skeptical viewpoints.
And this is where his argument takes that really interesting turn. He brings in a modern IVF example.
The grandmother, Vivian McCona, giving birth to her biological grandchildren using her daughter Piper's egg and son-in-law Stephen's sperm.
Right, highlighting the seemingly improbable nature of this event.
Emphasizing that this modern scientific event, extraordinary in itself, validates the seemingly mythical Hindu births.
That's his argument, demonstrating the truth of the science within Hinduism science, suggesting biological boundaries might be more fluid than we think.
Supporting the Gita's concept, 4.35, that all beings are part of God, interconnected.
It's a surprising connection, using modern tech to lend credence to ancient narratives. He concludes by calling for learned people to scientifically validate Hindu concepts, suggesting their scientific understanding within these traditions waiting to be appreciated.
Truly thought-provoking. Now let's delve into Intellect, Knowledge, Character from December 29th, 1996, examining these crucial attributes.
Okay, he starts with definitions. Buddhi, intellect, is the power to analyze with good intention, discernment.
And Arivu, knowledge.
Deeper understanding of reality, what moves, what doesn't move. Referencing Gita 2.61, steady intelligence through sense control, consciousness fixed on God. A careful distinction.
Then he shares Thirumuruga Kuruprananda Variyar's view.
Yes, that character, Pambu, defined as love born from the heart, is more needed than mere knowledge, Adivu, seen as pronouncements from the brain.
Prioritizing emotional intelligence, compassion, ethics over just intellect.
Right. To illustrate knowledge developing with character, he uses Narada Maharishi as an example.
The revered sage who, despite lacking formal education, gained profound knowledge by listening to divine stories, stabilizing his consciousness.
Enabling him to assist Vyasa, underscoring that true knowledge often comes through devotion, contemplation, not just formal learning.
Then the contrasting example, Kamsa.
The tyrannical king lacking intellect, knowledge, character, leading him to kill his nephews out of fear.
Connecting this to Gita 17.1 men penance done foolishly to harm others, illustrating the destructive consequences of lacking these qualities.
Then, to bring it to the modern day, he presents that contemporary, deeply disturbing example from the Sri Lankan Tamil Weekly.
The female doctor who murdered and dismembered her former lover out of revenge after a failed relationship.
He starkly contrasts this horrifying act with figures like Kannagi and Makavi from Tamil literature, known for their moral principles.
Arguing that despite the doctor's education, her actions revealed a profound lack of true intellect, genuine knowledge, and cultivated character.
It's a powerful juxtaposition, highlighting his belief that education alone isn't enough without a strong ethical foundation.
He concludes by stressing the importance of fulfilling one's duties, Gita 18.7.
Yes, and for a doctor, that duty is saving life. He advocates adopting mental austerity, peacefulness, simplicity, self-control, purification, Gita 17.6 as a life goal.
Believing this cultivation is essential for developing individuals with intellect, knowledge, and strong moral character, leading to a better society.
Exactly. Now let's look at his speech on ignorance, Tamasguna, from September 15th, 1996, exploring this mode of being.
He starts with modern crime examples to illustrate the rampage of the quality of ignorance.
Yes, two very disturbing ones. The Abbotsford attack, rape and murder by a man claiming to hate people, and the Paris murder, pregnant woman killed by her brother over religious differences.
Grabbing the listener's attention immediately, underscoring the urgency.
Definitely. He connects these incidents to Tamasguna as described in Gita 14.13.
Manifestations like madness, illusion, inertia, darkness of understanding.
Right, linking contemporary violence to this ancient concept, suggesting it's a symptom of a deeper problem rooted in ignorance, lack of spiritual understanding.
But after that sobering intro, he emphasizes the noble aim of elevating people from tamas towards sattvaguna goodness.
Yes, using the story of Narada and Prahlada as an inspiring example of transformation.
How someone born into negative circumstances can rise spiritually.
Precisely. He recounts the story. Indra defeats the Asuras, takes Hiranyakashipu's pregnant wife. Narada intervenes, recognizing the unborn child Prahlada as a future great devotee.
So Indra leaves the mother with Narada.
Yes. Prahlada, exposed to spiritual teachings in the womb, grows up devout despite his Asura birth, and ultimately saves the Devas from his own father.
The key takeaway being transformation is possible through guidance from good people.
That's how he presents it, saying elevating fanatics driven by ignorance requires good people, like Narada, in religious and moral leadership roles.
Concluding that such leadership, rooted in sattva, is essential for world peace, urging listeners to cultivate goodness.
Now, let's move to desires. Lust Kama, from September 1st, 1996, tackling a powerful, destructive emotion.
He identifies lust as the primary force leading to destruction in Hinduism.
Yes, very strongly, saying conquering lust equals conquering life itself, referencing Gita 3.21 on great men setting examples, establishing the gravity right away.
Warning about its deceptive power, how it can lead even respected figures astray.
Exactly, suggesting no one is immune, constant vigilance is needed.
And he uses that analogy, lust like a knotted thread that can't pass through a needle's eye.
A vivid image. Even a trace prevents approaching Ishwara, the divine, suggesting complete purification is necessary for spiritual connection.
Then he provides those modern examples.
The very prominent ones. The divorce of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, linked partly to her affair, and Nelson and Winnie Mandela's divorce, linked to her affair.
Using respective figures to show lust's devastating consequences, even for those who seem to have everything.
Underscoring how it brought them down from elevated positions to a lowest state of life, public scrutiny, personal suffering, highlighting the profound repercussions.
He even illustrates lust affecting the divine, the story of Shiva desiring Vishnu as Mohini.
Right. Even powerful Shiva momentarily disregards Parvati, captivated by Omini's alluring form, underscoring desire's pervasive, potent nature.
Concluding again with the Gita's warning, the three gates to hell.
Lust, anger, greed. Gita 16.21. Re-emphasizing the necessity of renouncing lust for spiritual liberation and peace.
Offering a path forward.
Yes. Stating the only way to overcome lust is to fill the heart with deep, unwavering devotion. This leads to understanding God and ultimately world peace. A strong message on inner purification and devotion.
Okay, we've explored several speeches now. It's clear how he wove ancient scripture with contemporary events. Let's shift to that different kind of speech, his personal tribute to his mentor, S.K. Mahendran.
Delivered on the 31st Day Memorial. This gives a much more intimate glimpse into Chithraambalaalar's values, the influence of mentorship.
It sounds very personal, emotional, a sense of profound loss.
Definitely. He describes Mahendran as a great man, president of the International Human Cultural Council and attorney. Highlights the anticipation for his return to Canada, then the shock and grief.
Finding solace in the Gita's teaching on the soul's imperishable nature.
Yes, that likely provided comfort. He emphasizes their 25-year journey, Mahendran's hard work, intellect, reform, humanism, humanitarianism, clearly a huge influence.
And their shared dedication to the Tamil language was revealing.
Very much so. Recounting early correspondence, Mahendran insisting on correct grammar, ora thivu, not ora rivu, referencing the Kanchi sage on the meaning of or.
Showing the importance Mahendran placed on using Tamil with precision and depth.
A shared cultural, intellectual foundation. Mahendran believed mastering written Tamil was key for the language to gain prestige. This passion clearly resonated with Chithraambalaalar.
And Mahendran's religious views, love for all religions, rooted in his own.
Yes, a seeker of spiritual wisdom. Chithraambalaalar references Sayumanavar Swamigal on the unity of religions, one supreme being. Mahendran taught against denigrating other faiths.
But also encouraged Tamil youth to participate in temple administration, leading by example.
Revitalizing his ancestral temple. Commitment to both interfaith harmony and preserving their own traditions in the diaspora.
Mahendran also believed education was paramount, more important than wealth for a community.
Absolutely. Building the Iravagam, abode of knowledge for students, offering encouragement, embodying Krishna's teaching. Do your duty, don't expect rewards, even giving financial aid selflessly.
Seen as a selfless leader living his principles. And politically. Deep conviction for Tamil Eelam.
Unwavering. viewing it as a historical right lost to colonialism. Chithraambalaalar recalls Mahendran's revolutionary slogans from 1968 under a pseudonym.
Connecting his views to earlier historical calls for a separate Tamil state.
Right. Mahendran believed Tamils and Sinhalese needed to live separately for prosperity, using that Putu-maker analogy, needing separation to maintain identity, a shared conviction.
Mahendran's humanism also stood out, concern for the suffering of displaced Tamils.
Deep concern, leading him to write, "When will our competitions end?" Genuine empathy beyond just politics.
Chithraambalaalar concludes the tribute urging people to uphold Mahendran's ideals, Tamil language, homeland, humanism.
Yes, as the most fitting tribute. He even shares borrowing Mahendran's analogy, "I am a completed tower, you are the scattered bricks," showing the depth of respect and influence.
This tribute really offers invaluable insight into the personal connections, the intellectual lineage that shaped Chithraambalaalar.
It really does.
Finally, we arrive at what was, tragically, his very last speech. Delivered at his book launch, Tamilar Kuruchchethra Geethai, just 4 days before he passed away.
Knowing this adds such poignancy, such weight to his words.
He starts by acknowledging the attendees, the chief guest, Dr. Ganapathy Somasundaram.
But notably expresses missing his absent mentors, S.K. Mahendran and Kalinjar Shanmuganathan. Calling Mahendran the god in my heart, worrying about Shanmuganathan's illness, reveals his deep affection, even then.
Then he expresses humility about writing a Gita-inspired work, attributing Sculptor of Thought entirely to Mahendran.
Yes, reiterating that immense respect and gratitude, underscoring Mahendran's lasting impact.
How does he justify writing the book for the present era?
By referencing the Gita, where Krishna calls Arjuna tiger among men, Chithraambalaalar says his intention was to speak to whoever holds that stature in Kali Yuga, showing his belief in the Gita's enduring relevance for contemporary leaders.
Emphasizing his aim for the book, to propagate internationally that the Tamil-Elam struggle is based on sound principles applicable to all.
Yes, hoping to garner wider support and recognition. Mentioning it was written after discussions, debates with friends, a collaborative aspect.
He even addresses potential critiques,
Yeah.
mentioning Diana Monica Lewinsky for future writings.
Suggesting a strategy, perhaps, of engaging with current figures to make the Gita more relatable, accessible.
Then he appeals for unity, constructive criticism among attendees.
A heartfelt appeal, emphasizing incorporating good ideas, cautioning against fault-finding, slander, referencing the Gita on consequences of sins affecting future generations, stressing devotion as key.
How did he define devotion in this context?
Uniquely, accepting the country, the land is sacred as God, supporting all service towards its well-being for current and future generations, directly linking spiritual belief to political activism.
Expressing hope for longevity to continue writing, showing his passion, purpose.
He also touches on the Gita's philosophy of respecting elders, sharing that personal anecdote about wishing for Mahendran's writing power at his grave. So poignant.
Acknowledging his guru, Kavirayar Anavan, and again emphasizing the book's collaborative nature.
Yes, mentioning Paramay's encouragement, Vishnu's help, Raja Mahendran's crucial review for the newspaper. Reinforcing it was a collective effort.
He concludes with a final call for unity and effort.
Yes, expressing gratitude for support, like Dr. Somasundaram buying 300 books, advising against poor quality writing that could harm future generations, ending with a loving farewell before the Padamandram debate.
This final speech really encapsulates his humility, dedication, respect for mentors, collaborators, and his enduring hope.
It truly does. Listening across these speeches, several key things about his character, his thinking, become crystal clear.
Like that profound commitment to Tamil identity and the Elam cause, it fundamentally shaped how he interpreted everything, even ancient scripture.
Absolutely. And his remarkable ability to take complex Hindu concepts and apply them so directly, often powerfully, to contemporary events, politics, social issues, personal struggles.
A defining characteristic, offering this unique lens to interpret the world.
And that consistent emphasis on mind control, the power of devotion, essential pathways for individual well-being and broader societal harmony, a constant thread.
We also saw his consistently critical, often direct analysis of politics and society. Not afraid to voice strong opinions, hold leaders accountable to Dharma.
Definitely. And the deep respect, the gratitude for his mentors, especially Mahendran, shines through as a major formative influence.
Ultimately, his desire to create impactful work rounded in timeless wisdom, like his book, speaks to a life lived with conviction, dedicated to communication.
But it wasn't just speaking his mind, it was crafting a message to resonate and endure.
So as you've journeyed with us through this deep dive into Chithraambalaalar's speeches, maybe consider this. What does his unique synthesis of ancient wisdom and his deeply engaged interpretations of modern realities suggest about spirituality's role in navigating today's complexities?
And if this exploration has intrigued you, maybe delve deeper. Research the Tamilar movement's context, explore the Bhagavad Gita further, or investigate Erignar Anna's life figures clearly significant in Chithraambalaalar's world.
In the echoes of his powerful, thought-provoking voice, we find not just the articulation of ideas and convictions, but the enduring imprint of a life dedicated to bridging the ancient and modern, the spiritual and political, all driven by profound, unwavering purpose.